Women in fiction are often put into boxes. There's the manic pixie dream girl, the femme fatale, the girl next door, the cool girl, and countless others. Women are rarely allowed to just exist. They have to fit into a role, a stereotype, or someone else's idea of who they should be. These tropes are often presented as flattering or empowering, but most of the time, they aren't. More often than not, they exist to serve someone else's story, usually a man's. And then there's one of the most disturbing tropes of all, the dead hot girl. This trope is often paired with something called haunting the narrative, where a character drives the story even though she's physically absent, usually because she's dead. So what does it actually mean to haunt the narrative? A character who haunts the narrative is one whose presence shapes everything that happens, even though she's not there. Her disappearance or death becomes the emotional and narrative center of the story. Her secrets, relationships, and trauma push every other character forward. Two of the most famous examples of this trope are Laura Palmer from Twin Peaks in the 90s and Alison DiLaurentis from Pretty Little Liars in the 2010s. Both stories begin with their deaths, or in Alison's case, her presumed death. Both girls come from seemingly perfect small towns, and both are remembered as beautiful, popular, and powerful. Let's start off looking at Laura Palmer. She's kind of the original. She's one of the earliest and most famous examples of that dead hot girl. The first time we see her in Twin Peaks, she's wrapped in plastic and dead. To the town, she was perfect. She was the homecoming queen. She volunteered. She was kind, pretty, and well-loved. But Laura was also a drug addict. She was deeply traumatized, and she was being sexually abused by her father, who was possessed by an evil spirit named B.O.B. Every single storyline in Twin Peaks is tied to Laura and her death. The show literally does not exist without her, even though she never appears alive in the present timeline. Laura only appears through dream sequences, old videos, and her fragmented diary. There is some narration and there is some of her perspective, but none of it is really in the present day. Her death exposes the town's hidden corruption. It drives her father into madness. It fills her friends with guilt as they slowly learn who she truly was. The series slowly peels apart the image of the perfect homecoming queen and reveals what was underneath, a girl who was suffering while everyone looked the other way. Alison DiLaurentis is probably the most famous successor of Laura Palmer. Pretty Little Liars begins with Alison's disappearance. After she vanishes, her group of friends falls apart. I believe Arya went away, and the others just kind of stopped talking to each other as much. They reunite at her funeral a while later, where the main story begins. Like Laura, Alison only exists in flashbacks and memories for most of the show. She does come back in season 4, but up until then, she's only seen in dream sequences and flashbacks. In season 4, or maybe it was 5, I believe she becomes a fully, fleshed out main character, but up until then, she's not. While Alison, much like Laura, only appears in flashbacks and is the driving force behind the story, she is villainized. Laura wasn't. Alison is portrayed as manipulative, cruel, and dangerous, someone who terrorized her entire town. Everyone's problems were apparently caused by this 15-year-old girl, 13 or 14 in some cases. And I will be honest, she was mean. She was a mean girl. But the show even frames adult men as being intimidated or tempted by her. She was 15, yet her sexuality is treated as something threatening rather than something that was exploited. Her trauma is turned into suspicion. Her vulnerability is turned into power. Just like Laura, Alison's past shapes every conflict in the present. But instead of being mourned, she's blamed. One of the main issues that seems to arise in the dead hot girl trope, or the haunting the narrative trope, is punishing promiscuity. Laura and Alison are both depicted as highly promiscuous girls. Alison is 15 at the time of her disappearance, and Laura is 17 at the time of her death. Their ages and extent of their sexual activity, which is talked about throughout their respective shows, is disturbing. Laura is sexually assaulted, and Alison is sexually assaulted by her teacher and many other adult men. Laura and Alison's death implicitly serve as punishments for their promiscuity. Even though neither were even adults and both were victims of severe abuse, they get unfairly punished and villainized due to one main reason: the crime of being a girl. Laura Palmer and Alison DiLaurentis are tragic figures, but they're also symbols. As dead hot girls who haunt the narrative, they are punished, sexualized, and mythologized in ways that deny them the same compassion given to more acceptable female characters. Their deaths expose the corruption of their towns, but they are also used to make those towns, and the people in them, more interesting. They haunt the narrative not because they were dangerous, but because the story never knew how to let them live. Laura and Alison both serve as a tragic loss for the greater good of their family, friends, and town. As archetypal dead hot girls, they are punished, sexualized, and mythologized in ways that deny them the respect afforded to more socially acceptable figures, like the girl next door. Their deaths or disappearance reveal the hidden corruption, secrecy, and moral failings of their community, while their stories continue to haunt the narrative, showing that society often condemns girls for traits beyond their control, particularly sexuality and secrecy.